you just don't know how happy I am to be here with you folks, because this is where I started, okay? As Res Life Director and Student Activities Director, Director of Career Planning and Services, and Associate Dean. I never got the Vice President position in Student Life because the President offered me 2 positions at that time. I was young. He said, you can be Dean or Vice President of Admissions, or you can be Vice President of Student Affairs. And I said, I picked Student Affairs, and he said, that was the wrong choice. I really wanted to do the other one. So I went into the admissions field at Elon way back then. But I love to be with all of you because I truly know I'm in a room of people who are student-centered. And that is the biggest thing to me. I consider this work a sacred trust between you and the students. And so anything else that goes around in the big world, in the nation, in the business part of the institutions is only there because we have a sacred trust with the students. And it's a big deal to me. So I'm thrilled to be here with you today. The other reason is I seem to know a lot about your area. My husband is from Allentown and lived here lots of years and in Bethlehem. And when I met him, I was so tired of hearing about Dorney Park. I couldn't wait to get here so I could see it and actually know what it is. So it was his wish to be with me today, and we were going to stay a few days. And we have 2 aging mothers, and they keep falling. As you know, when you get to be that age, you'll know the fall is the tragedy of your aging parents. And so he isn't here, otherwise he'd be right here wanting to know all about each one of you. And I've heard all your names before, so it's exciting to be here. So I do want to talk to you. I want to thank Carmen, first of all. She's absolutely right. You know, my work is usually all with college presidents these days, and so many college presidents don't get it. They don't get us. And so it's really interesting to never heard it put exactly that way before, but it's really interesting to think about maybe today being the start of a time when you could go back at a different level and begin to understand that yelling and whining and talking about how hard it is might not be the right way to get through, okay? And I say that with a smile on my face because I just remember those days when I would go into the president's office and just say, it's just too hard. It's just too hard. Can't do it. I was up in the middle of the night last night. I was at the hospital for an accident last night. There was a big fight last night. Somebody really disappointed me last night. And we sort of become natural at needing a place to dump all of that. And really at the safe place is at the presidential level. But when we do that too much, they don't really ever learn from us what we're learning about all of those things. So I really appreciate those comments. So I'd like to say a word for you about the book because it's what I'm going to talk about today. And I want to tell you a little bit about how it was written and why. About 7 years ago, it became hard for me to travel and go to colleges because of those 2 moms that I take care of. And so we designed a process where presidents would come to me at the Credo headquarters, and the day was at no fee. They would just come. They could have 6 hours. Could have from 9 to 3. It was totally their agenda. I promised I would not sell them anything, and they promised to send ahead an agenda. After over 220 of those all-day interviews with private college presidents, at the very beginning I decided I would keep some very really sophisticated research. And that was me beginning to notch on a piece of paper exactly what they were worried about and what was becoming the biggest problem on campus. After the first 100 or so, I got a little more sophisticated and started getting it into a better kind of format. But in the end, after all of those day-long settings, where I heard just the beginning and the end and the middle and all the kinds of issues that were there, I figured out that there were 10 or 11 of them that were just always the same. Always the same. Same things would come in every single time that they were talking. And so we chose those 10 or 11 things, and Credo sent a research team out to 5 colleges who had been surviving and had turned it to thriving. They had just turned it around. And we went down deep into the faculty, deep into all of the staff, even into the support system, and asked people, are these the things? You know, are these really the things? Can you point to any other things? Would you cross off any of these things? Where would you land on this? And so we got it down to 9 at that point that were really important. So what I want to tell you about the 9 slides I'm going to show you today is that these are the 9 things, as far as we can tell, and that's been years now, so we keep doing it over and over and over and checking it out over and over, that seem to be consistently present in all thriving colleges. Now, what I mean by thriving, because every college has got a little bit of thriving in it somewhere, is colleges that really, the numbers are all good, and so is the spirit. That's the easiest way to say it to you. Retention's up, admissions is up, recruiting is up, fundraising is up, and spirit is up. So these are the 9 things. So, everybody always says to me before I speak, we told people about your book and they will have all read it before they came. Right. I know that, Jerome. I've been one of the ones over the years that have skimming the book on the plane on the way to someplace where I was supposed to read it. So in some ways, I hope this will tickle you to read it if you haven't read it yet, to get down deeper into some of what we're going to do, because we're sort of going to skim the top of it to give you some meat to talk about in your discussions later on in the morning. But that's how that all started, and that's where the research came from. So I really don't like reading PowerPoints. So what I'm going to do with each of the slides is to let you read through the PowerPoint, except for one, the one about you. And then I'm going to just poke at it a little bit, okay? I think we're going to have a good time for questions afterwards. If you just urgently need to stop me, that's okay, just poke your hand up. But if you'd just rather jot some things down, that might help us stay on track with our timing, okay? So as we go at this, you're going to see that the very first element in thriving colleges, collaborative and courageous leadership. So read through these for a minute, and then I'm going to poke at them. All right, let's look at this a little bit, and I want to start with you. We have leadership teams all over our campus that are ineffective and dysfunctional, okay? And I'm going to give you my one piece of why that happens. It's because people are working around someone. Now, if you're working around someone that's with you, just keep your eyes down, okay? There's nothing you can do about that today. But I find that almost on every single campus that I have been on, a team is crippled because they're all working around someone. Now, why are you more susceptible to that at a lot of times than others are? Besides the development office, where everybody goes to age sometimes. For you guys, your greatest strength contributes to this. You are developmental by nature. You are educators by nature. And you are people by nature. And so you always want to give everybody the second chance, the next chance, more chances. And you always want to watch the growth. And I'm going to say to you today, because I'm supposed to give you a national and a higher perspective, that it is not unusual for 3 or 4 people to cap an institution from thriving. I'm just going to say that to you. It's not unusual for that to happen. If somebody is in a prime position and that area of the campus is failing and it's going downward, then it's not unusual for that to cap your progress. So, I'm a people person too. And I think over my time in education, I probably let more than 50 people go, and they all still speak to me. There's a way for us to talk to people about changing direction, because you can bet if the college isn't thriving in their area, they're not thriving in their heart. Agreed? There's something going on. And so becoming skilled at whatever level you are in the student affairs area, to be able to talk to somebody to help them become more self-aware. I'm going to tell you one thing. I'm almost 70 years old now, and it's a lot of learning over all these years. And I will just tell you that I think one of the best things that we come out of in our college work these days is understanding that EQ is as important as IQ, right? You believe that because you've studied it and you know that. Self-awareness is the biggest pace in success. But from the cabinet of the president all the way down to the student government, certainly in the faculty senate, and in task force and teams that are set up all over campus, there is dysfunction if people are not saying what they really mean and really believe because they're working around someone. So that was a number one thing that came out of our study, and it's a number one thing that we say about courageous leadership, a big one. And then as you look down there a little bit more, I want to speak a minute to the differences between, or the balance between leadership and inclusivity. We've been the inclusivity industry, okay? I remember 15 years ago, Board of Trustee members just putting their head in their hands because we were so worried about collaboration and not attending to business. And now all these years later, we see that they were a little bit right, that we were doing that a lot. The urgency of the national issues now in higher education cause us to have a perfect balance between leadership and inclusivity. If we don't find that perfect balance, we tend to waste a ton of time on processing and never make a decision. Been there ever? On your campuses? It's exactly what happens. Even in our strategic planning now that we do with colleges at Credo, we use the balanced scorecard method now. We bring a set of issues that that particular college ought to be worrying about. We don't do the SWOT analysis anymore because the SWOT analysis brings up internal things and concentrates on them to fix. And so we want you to be fixed based on the national agenda of what says colleges will thrive. So we bring leadership and then we test it every single place on campus. And colleges are doing that now, testing it, refining it, juggling it, because we want the perfect blend between leadership and inclusivity. Does that make sense to you? So as you're doing your own jobs, honest to goodness, I believe that people in the student affairs area are so afraid sometimes not to be collaborative, because it's who we are, and it's what we believe that everybody ought to have a say. But as time goes by and urgency gets bigger, you're going to have to bring a little more leadership and balance it with the right amount of inclusivity. That's what's going to be the future. So you've got to start thinking about that right now. I said that when I reached 65, and now I'm well beyond that, that I was never ever going to argue with anybody again about what a goal was and an objective was and an initiative was and a project was. I was never going to do that again. I was going to bring leadership to it and then just do it. But we get so caught up in the processing right now that that's what sets us behind. So those are what those next couple mean. Now, I don't know if you get deep into this level. I know your senior officers do, but you need to know as professionals at whatever level you are right now practicing at, that 50% of our Board of Trustee members across this country are micromanaging these days. And they're doing it for good reason, because they watched us slip a bit, okay? Some of the finances slipped, some of the aid grew out of control. The scholarship grew out of control. There are all kinds of reasons. Now, they take their really good business heads, they're really big business heads, and they start to get into something that they don't know very much about, and all of a sudden, we've got a disadvantage in our growth and our thriving again. So part of my goal these days has been to speak to Board of Trustee members to tell them how we need them appropriately, because they are distracting, in a lot of cases, our senior management on many campuses. And it's funny what you can say after you write a book. You know, I'd have never said that when I was before this and not retired. But I got to say it to you. So we've all got a responsibility to get them as educated as we can be so they don't dive down to those other levels of board management. I want to tell you, some of you will shudder at this, that I had a board chair in another state of a college who was taking home all of the financial aid files and screening them himself to be sure that there was nobody who could afford to come that was getting too much scholarship. I mean, how many laws did that break? How many laws did that break? But that's what happens when somebody says the discount rate is too high, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So that's element number one. We're going to move pretty quickly to element number two, and that's about vision. And there's some things I want you to know about vision. Just go ahead and look at this carefully. I'm going to skip to a second slide here to show you this, so you know what vision is, because I'm sick of arguing about mission and vision too. So let's look at this. So mission is what you do. It sometimes lasts 30 to 50 years. It just doesn't change. Vision is how you do it, and how you do it in this present time. Okay? That's what vision is, and it only lasts 5 to 7 years. So you take your mission. If I had my mission about being student-centered, career-centered, liberal arts-centered, whatever it was 10 years ago, and I cast a vision, it would have had nothing to do with the job market or all those pieces that we now are so worried about and that parents are worried about. So the vision has to be cast to carry out the mission today. You get it? Everybody tries to go ahead and change the mission. The mission is good. But there's got to be a vision about how we do it right now. How do we do it right now? And you've got to start thinking about that too. How do we keep students at the center of what we do right now in this day and age? When their heads are they've got the library in their pocket, don't they? With their telephones. It's right in their pocket. And how do we keep them, how do we do what we used to do with them when they don't want to hear lecture anymore? When professors are no longer the keepers of all of the information. They can get an answer to an information question quicker by Googling it than they can by going to class. So how do we retrain professors to be facilitators of learning instead of lecturers, okay? All those things change. So your mission can stay the same, but your vision's got to be out there. If you don't have a good vision of at your college about how you're going to do that now, then it's something you can talk about. It's something you can say. I want to look at our mission and I want to see how we pull it off in this day and age and have a vision for that. And you can have that for your own departments too. You don't have to wait for the college to do it. So if we go back here a minute, the vision is inspiring and motivating and memorable. There's a collaborative effort to look at it and buy into it. But I want to look with you at the third one, because this is really different, guys. And at one point I'm going to try to convince you to use a planning process in your divisions that will be more in line with the new normal that we see now. But if you're going to do that, here's what the new research says. That you don't touch mission and vision until after you've done your planning. Now that's so odd for those of us who have been around for a long time. You know, we get our mission and we get our vision and then we do our planning. You know what we're finding now on college campuses? If we don't leave that to the side, it stifles any outside innovative thinking, or it takes so long we don't get to do innovative thinking. And so now the research says, just put it aside. It's like zero-based planning. What are the game changers? What would be the game changers for your departments? What would you grab on and do that could really move the needle in a college, move it forward in some way? Retention goes up, or recruitment goes up, or your department becomes happier, whatever the needle is to move. You've got to put mission and vision here for a minute and just allow yourselves to dream. You've got to allow yourselves to dream. And I'll say this, but I've said it until I have no breath left. You've got to be careful not to let money inhibit you at the moment, or you'll never get there in the dream. Now, you can always come back to what's affordable, or play it out over 10 years, or decide if it's going to be donor savvy or whatever. But if you let it get in your way, there are some reasons people are saying now, things that immobilize college campuses. One of them is institutional self-esteem, and we're going to look at that in a minute. But one of the other ones is that everybody's so worried about finances that they don't dream anymore. You buy that? It's kind of what happens sometimes. And so the colleges that are thriving are still dreaming. They're still dreaming. And the colleges that are worried about all those other things have stopped doing that. So you got to put mission, vision aside, dream, see what would be the absolute world, and then begin to mold it towards what's affordable to you. And we will talk about that in just a minute too. So that's the second element. Now we're going to talk about this institutional self-esteem piece. You will really appreciate this because my former president, Fred Young at Elon University, who was my mentor for almost 20 years, when I told him I was going to write a chapter of the book on morale, he said, "Joanne, don't use that word. Because in every college, it's either bad or the worst it's ever been. There's no other way to look at it." So I made up this word, institutional self-esteem. I think it's sort of a student affairs-y word, don't you? That's why I made it up. I'm sure it came out of that. But read through these things that bring institutional self-esteem. Some are so easy to understand, I'm going to skip them. Like the students seek out the institution and stay, that means retention and recruitment is up. The one that talks about levels of constituency engagement increasing is about the donor base growing, getting bigger. In our small private colleges, we have a lot of donors who say, it's always me, it always comes back to me. You don't have enough donors. So I'm going to skip over those for just a minute. If you want to ask more questions about advancement later, you can. I want to go right to the middle, the institution that teaches well the students that it has. We have some thriving institutions these days who have open enrollment because they've decided who they're going to teach and they teach them well. So here, I'm going to tell you a quote by Mark Lombardi, president of Maryville University in St. Louis. It's one of our most innovative presidents. And this is a quote he said to me, "Joanne, I want you to remember this when you're speaking to people. 50 to 100 years ago, a good college was known as a college that could keep people out." Make sense? Whoever you rejected, whoever you declined, that's how you got your quality level, okay? I'll bet you anything that he's right about this. 20 years from now, it's going to be more about the students that we put out there in the workplace, okay? And what they're able to achieve, the skills that they have, how they're able to solve problems, how they're able to write, how they're able to get along with their teammates. And so we're going to have a shift here. It's a very shift that I think happened at Elon University. When it was Elon College, those guys, they get a little too big for their boots over there some days because they've got 10,000 applications for 1,000 spots. I like to remind them that we used to have 1,002 applications for 1,000 spots back in the old days. But what they decided back then, and what many colleges decided was, we're not going to wish and wish and wish for better students. We're going to decide who our students are, know them, love them, determine right where they are, and then we're going to make a program that meets them there. Okay? Because for many of us, it's going to be a difficult task to raise the quality of students. We've been trying to do it based on money and scholarships for a long time, and that's running out. It's running out. It's not going to be any more of that. So it's going to be the kind of student that you put out. And now there's a race on. Now there's a race on. Of course, colleges with great reputations from the quality days are going to have an edge in the race. But for the rest of everybody, the race is going to be, can you do the right things for the students you have to transform their lives so that they can go on for the future, and for all of our Ivies and everybody else too. So that's a real important point to me. When the entire campus is teaching well the students that it has, and have leaned in and said, these are ours, and we're going to do this, the self-esteem intent really can be pretty high. It really can. So I want to go back up to the first one. The campus, when we went back and interviewed all the campuses about institutional self-esteem, they said it's real simple. We look around and we see that there are strategic investments in people, places, and programs. If we don't see anything moving in those areas, if salaries have been frozen a good long time, and recognition and ability to go up in the system, and if there's no crane out on campus, and there's no building going on, and no kind of renovation going on, and if the programs aren't being refined, you know, we see this all over the country now, where you take phys ed and it's got 10 majors in it, and you change it to recreation management and it goes straight up to 700 majors. If nobody's watching those kind of things, so that they're investing in programs and program changes and program refinements and academic efficiency, then a college does not have good morale. It's more of a complaining morale. And you know, I haven't added this bullet up here. I guess I probably better, but I'm going to add it for you because this is right in your world. I believe the self-esteem of a college goes down when processes and systems aren't good. Do you too? Where people are hung up because the process doesn't work, or it's not student-centered. You know, some of our biggest work right now at Credo is we get a whole bunch of people who are that's their job. We get them in a room and we make them use this paper to process map something that a student goes through, and then reprocess map it with them at the center. Do you know how many things are faculty and staff centered and not student centered? And if you don't believe me, you just need to think about the withdrawal process right now. Because if these people didn't want to leave when they said they were going to leave, they sure leave after we made them walk to 14 offices and get signatures. Okay? And you know, there's so much coming and going these days, so much talk about colleges, that we can't afford that process to be student-centered even on the way out. So self-esteem kind of goes down when our processes and systems aren't right too. And I want to talk to you about the last one for a minute. I don't mean recruiting national visibility. I mean that every one of the institutions in this room is represented by a family of graduates and a family of people all over the nation who have done something significant. Every one of you is. You could sit there and tell me who they are. They've either been in the medical field. They're your brand promise come true. They're your product, okay? You did it with them. And some of you did it 30 years ago. Some of you did it last graduating class. But those are your people. And as they fade away into the distance, we forget to tell their stories. So the institutions that are thriving have captured the stories of the people making a difference. I don't mean the chief operating officer of Qualcomm. I mean the teacher of the year, you know, or a missionary who's done something big over in Africa or in another country, or somebody who started an entrepreneurial business from scratch. If you go to some of the best college websites, you will see it scrolling stories of the people that came from their places because of the family that you have. One of the best self-esteem issues is for people to continue to bring up the people out there who are regionally and nationally recognized who make a difference. And guess what? Everybody doesn't know who they are, and you do. You knew them. You know, you knew exactly who they were. And the faculty sometimes will know who they are. But we've got to begin to pull our marketing people towards getting these stories together. One time I was making this speech and I got a little frustrated and I just said, I wish somebody would do a coffee table book of the 100 people that have made a difference in the world that belong to Lehigh or belong to Muhlenberg or one of those places. And so somebody took me up on it. And it's absolutely gorgeous, okay? And it must have cost a fortune. I felt so guilty I said it. But it was beautiful. You turn page after page after page, and they're our people. Nobody can steal them. It's your brand promise that nobody else can talk about. So as you see these people, begin to bring them to the top because it makes a big difference to everybody. So institutional self-esteem is huge. Let's go to the fourth one, institutional story. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about this. Read through it for a minute. Guys, I'm convinced that there are 3 black holes of spending on college campuses, okay? And you could just spend forever in them, and sometimes we do spend forever in them. One of them is financial aid, you know that, right? We could just go on and on until we're crippled by financial aid. One of them is technology, because often we try to have the latest and greatest of everything, and so the spending just goes up. And one of them is marketing. And I would tell you that marketing is the most under-budgeted of those 3. It is really under-budgeted, but it is the place where we could just pour tons of money to make sure the institutional story is being told. So that's why I want to say to you that that number 1 bullet up there is important. Nobody ought to anymore be spending any more money on making a college visible or starting a new program or looking at a new message without doing the market research to make sure it's good. And we have a marketing guy at our offices for a long time, and his team at one time designed a view book. It's not our business, I don't even know why he did it, but he got a group of designers together and he wanted to do it for a special college. So he's real proud about it. And he ran down the hall and he stuck it right in front of me and he said, "Do you like it?" I said, "Well, if I do, we're in trouble. I'm 68. If I like it, it isn't going to go, guys." I still like the seal on the front of the view book. This is an age gap here. It has to be tested on 18 and 19-year-olds. So we've got to do some market research in an inexpensive way as focus groups, and an expensive way is hiring somebody to do it. But we can't use our intuition anymore. And what we like is not what they like. So we have to be careful about that. A couple other things I want to point out. Do you see that little S on the end of value proposition? Oh my gosh, you guys will understand this so well, and I wish you would help communicate it to the rest of the campus. We often hear that everybody has to be a recruiter to campus. And then we hear the next sentence, which is, "I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to tell them about. If I can't tell them about my own program, I don't know what to talk about. Admissions doesn't give me enough material so that I know what to do." They're not recruiting behind the college day table for my people. Let me just tell you, in a high school, when hundreds of kids are walking by those admission tables, it is enough for us to get them to smile at us. We can't get them to stop and talk about history. It isn't going to happen. That's not where it's all going to be. It's going to be about letting them understand that it's an experience. So here's why I think you're key to this whole process right here. If everybody would just relax and know they ought to do less talking and more listening, we'd be in a whole different place. And you would be the people who would understand that the best. A board member will say to me, "Well, you know, I meet a prospective student. I don't know which program to tell them about, and I don't know where to go, and I don't remember the facts. I know you gave me this little thing for my wallet, but I pull it out, and I look like I'm reading, and I don't know what to do." And I said to him that day, "Did it occur to you to ask them what they had been most successful in high school? Did it occur to you to ask them what hobbies they're interested in? Did it occur to you to get inside their heart so you could give them a little bit of yours?" Because that's what makes the connection. I love it when student affairs people are in the room because they smile at that. Other people, they're like, because you know it's true. You know it's true. These kids want to be seen for what they've done so far. They don't want your spiel before you've been able to hear them. Okay? So it's a real important thing to look at value propositions, because every college is going around, every college looks for an elevator speech. Every college looks for the value proposition. I'm not going to poo-poo that that's all good. But the value proposition for me and the value proposition for you is different. A nursing student and a football student don't have the same value proposition at a college. So if we don't start paying attention in our private colleges, because you know that's what we say we do, and the publics are catching up to us in this, if we don't stop paying attention to the spiel and start paying attention to listening to their story so we can see how our story merges with theirs, then the private college piece is not going to be as effective as it can be. And I realized that the other day. somehow in my town I've become the college counselor for everybody who wants. So I got to stop that. And really in my church it's awful. So I've got to stop this so I don't do it. But I had a family come in with a blind woman the other day, and she couldn't see me at all. And she wanted to know, which college should I go to, and how do I act when I get there, and how do I kind of do this differently? And I thought to myself, you know, before I learned some stuff, I might have asked some different questions or started talking about, well, this one is this, and this one is this, and this one has this. And instead, I could say I looked at her right in the eyes. I put my hand on her hand, and I just said, well, tell me about you first. There's no way for us to talk to colleges before we don't talk about you. So help these guys do this, okay? Because telling the institutional story is about hearing their story and matching it to your story. That's one of the big pieces here. Everything else I think is easy enough. You know we've got to do social media differently. I'm never going to be the expert on that. Listen, you all were wonderful and put me up at the Renaissance Hotel last night, where I have to put my key card in the wall to make the lights work, and I have to do everything on the little iPad that they have there, and I'm 2 years away from that not working. Okay? 2 years away. So I can't tell you about all the social media stuff. I only can tell you our national research is still telling us that the personal approach with students is more important than texting them or emailing them, okay? That they still want to know you. They still want to talk to somebody at the institution that's there. But I'm also going to tell you that you're visible these days only on social media. So you gotta make that happen. You've got to be out there and doing some of that with them. Everything else I think is important. The one other one I might poke at is we find at every college we go to that the external world has got way more information about the college than the internal world does. So if you're in that position, you start advocating, okay? Have you ever seen the View Book? Have you seen any slideshows or videos that we're using? Have you seen donor publications? Do you know the case study for the campaign that you might be in? We give a lot more information about our college to the constituencies than we do to our internal world. So I wish you would have it, because we're gonna end up bumping. You're going to say something that they didn't say in that stuff. Or what usually happens, they're saying something that you didn't know or that isn't even really there. So you've got to be really careful with those kinds of pieces. You're the ones who can translate the reality of life on campus better than anybody else. So make sure you see what people are saying externally so that you can match up, so that you can show how that lives on your campus. It's going to be a big thing. All right, heading to the next one. Now I will probably hammer you just a little bit on this one, because we're the intuition people. All of the thriving colleges are using data well. I just got to tell you that. They're using data well. They have a habit of reflection and intentionality. And you see that little thing. You decide what data to collect, you collect it, you act on it, and you celebrate it or correct it. And I will tell you right now that when we go on campuses and collect data to address this issue, we find more data, more data than is ever being used for anything. It's just sitting, okay? Are people taking the SSI, and are they using it to correct some things? Are they using it to strategize for the future? Are they taking the NESI and doing that too? Are they taking all of the national things that we do? How are they reporting to third-party endorsements like U.S. News and World Report and whatever? The data piece is more important than ever. And I'm going to tell you that little bullet underneath that says both leading and lagging indicators are used, let me just talk about that for a minute. Because we are a group of lagging indicator people. At the end of the school year, we count. This is how many students came, this is what retention was, this is how we did with faculty retention, this is how we did with disciplinary processes, these are how many safety events we registered. We count at the end. And the whole world, from the accreditors to the government to everybody, is saying you've got to be more accountable. And you're going to have, those are lagging indicators. You've got to think monthly about indicators of things so that you can correct. Does that make sense to you? you've got to correct. Admissions folks are the best at that. They're watching apps and they're watching acceptances and they're watching yield and deposits all the time and correcting if something is wrong. But the rest of us have got to get on board. We've got to start looking in the first 6 weeks, and I know a lot of you do. And so what's happening with retention this year? How many people are on the list of the people that are most at risk, and what are the 5 things we're going to do for them? We've got to get on that leading edge of data. Now, I'm going to suggest something to you because I just think it would be fun for you. I suggest it to presidents' teams all the time, but I'm going to suggest it to you because I know you have planning retreats and I know you have summer things when you get people together. My suggestion to you is that at your next retreat, you have with staff, you have all together where you're talking about the next year, that everybody has to bring 5 important pieces of data. Everybody has to bring it. Now they can get it from the NESI, they can get it from they can get it from anything that you're collecting, or they can gather some national data on something that they want to bring. But you tell everybody the first hour of your meeting is going to be looking at the data and understanding what it means to you to correct and improve your programs. And I tell presidents' teams to do this too. And when they start doing it, they find out there's way more data than they ever thought, and some of it was not being brought to light. I had a college where the NESI said that 97% of the students still have a relationship with one of their faculty members. Now, don't you think the faculty would like to hear that? But that data just gets buried somewhere. So get that data up and on the table. People say to me all the time, I can't convince people of this, and I can't talk somebody into this, and I can't advocate in the right way. Use data. Just use data. That's a better way for you to do it in a more important day. So this is a great one for us, and we found that in all the thriving colleges, data was being used for every major decision. So I'm going to hang here for a minute about you and not so much about the university. Read through the universities and colleges. Read through these. So I'm going to talk about your plan now. The institutional plan, I want to tell you how the national scene is looking at this now. But you know, the days are gone of big Word documents that sit on shelves and nobody ever accomplishes them. Do you know that 10 years ago, almost 75% of time in strategic planning was spent wordsmithing the plan and 25% executing it? Do you believe that? Absolutely. We were so behind the curve. And the business world is pushing us and pushing us and pushing us to do something different. And they're giving us these 3 words, and I love them. Clarity, transparency, and agility. So we don't use the only thing we use now at Credo is a strategy map. It's a map. We use it for ourselves. I do it in churches all the time. A lot of nonprofits use it. We've got it out there in about 50 colleges now. But it's a map. Now, when I tell you about this map, you'll say, well, that's our old Word document, okay? But the map's got 4 themes or 5 themes, right? Like the Word document. It's got the mission and vision at the top. It's got your values kind of at the bottom. And then it's got the strategy coming up on the map of how you're going to get to this big theme up here. And then it almost, we make it so it looks like a building. I guess I should have brought a picture to show you. I can if you're interested in the next session. But it almost looks like a big filing cabinet because it's got balanced scorecard drawers on it. And if you know anything about the balanced scorecard, you know that they're concerned about institutional capacity, internal processes, the financial end of planning, and what does it result in for the stakeholder. So that's all on the map, and you kind of pull open those drawers on the map that look like little filing cabinet drawers, and inside them are 2 projects. Now, I'm going to push you to think about, when you start thinking about next year at your institutions, to look at 3 or 4 big chunk things that have to be done. And then to look at kind of 4 ways to look at it, kind of internally and what it's going to result in. And not to do any more than 2 projects under each of those things that lead up to it. Because the other thing that happens with strategic planning is we say we're going to do this much because everybody says we have to, and then we don't get any of it done. The new strategic planning nationally is about getting 2 things done, taking them off the map, that's the agility part, and putting 2 new interesting things that have to be done on. So when you go to a campus, sometimes I feel, I've spent strategic planning with over 100 colleges now in the last 15 years, and sometimes when I go to the campus and say, hi, I'm Joanne Soliday, I'm here to start your strategic planning, I get, ugh. I mean, we're a strategic planning weary group in colleges because it's been overwhelming. But transparency, everything on one page, clarity so everybody gets it, and agility so we can move around it and use the leading and lagging indicators is the biggest thing about planning these days. And it's collaborative, but it's efficient. Old days, 10 years ago, 18 months to 2 years to get the plan done. Okay? By the time the plan is done, it's not relevant and current. And then you start executing it. And a year into that, you begin to see that it's not relevant and current. So, or you get a new president in, and you go right ahead and you do another plan. All right? A map, and this is a great trend for us. A map means you start working on these things and you start doing them and you spend 25% on wordsmithing and 75%, because maps don't allow any more than 2 words. Just 2 words, okay? On each one of those little bubbles in the map. And you start looking at executing as being the bigger amount of time, and now we're moving somewhere. So you've got to think about that. It's got to be collaborative, but efficient. And it's got to be focused around action, I've already said that. And the budget's got to be aligned to it. My dream, I have a couple of dreams in private higher education before I'm done. And one of my dreams is that nobody on any campus anywhere will spend any money that is not in the strategic plan. That's my dream. I'm just going to say it. Unless it's an emergency or a gift, you can kind of do that. I had a college once who had their map all done, and then they called and told me that they just got a $20 million gift for international education. Well, international education was nowhere on the map. So I had a big conference call. Whole cabinet was at the table. I was in the middle on the conference call. What should we do? It's not on the map. And we got $20 million, and it's not. What should we do? I just, as calmly as I could, I said, change the map. Okay? Just change the map. Just do that. And so I think that's what we've got to be. We've got to be agile, but we also have to understand that if somebody's building a performing arts center and it wasn't in the strategic plan, or if somebody is spending a lot of money on something that is not on the map, it either needs to get on the map and come into its own with the agility, or it doesn't need to be done. If we don't discipline ourselves that way, our colleges are going to start falling and failing. So it's a very important thing for us to do. All right, we're getting through these pretty well. So I want you to look at this. If you asked me today, I could put every one of the 250 colleges I've worked with as a dot somewhere here. Okay? That means that some of them do not even need to be thinking strategically right now because their operations are in such a turmoil. Okay? And so their strategic plan might have to be about cleaning up operations. You get that? The infrastructure has to come first. Because when you leap up here to strategic and you start thinking of some strategic things, they will not happen because the process will get in the way. I was just at a college the other day where they said they're going to start a PA program. And one of the people, the registrar, said, well, I'm going to tell you one thing right now. I know you're getting the licensing, and I know you're in the queue, and I know you found the person, but if we don't straighten up and change some of the processes around here, that whole program is going to look like it's not convenient and not right for people. Because when you start bringing in those people, it's a different expectation level for you. So you've got to have your operational right, and then strategic, and then there's a moment in time when you're thriving where you can do some things with leverage. With absolute leverage. I love that a college right now that where I'm coaching, the president is making some $20 million deal with Burger King on her campus to be able to do more with wellness, okay? But she wouldn't have even been freed up to go talk about that if we hadn't gotten the operational stuff cleaned up first. So it's our presidents get consumed with the operational because it's in their faces every day. And by the way, so do you. You get consumed with it. You know what the number one issue, besides revenue, I'll tell you it was revenue, admissions and retention revenue, for these presidencies, over 200 presidents that came over the last years, is the fact that their vice presidents are seeped in so much on the front lines that it's hard for them to think strategically. And I'm going to say that to every one of you, whether you're a director of residence life, director of security, director of student activities, any of that. Every person in the college has got to have somebody right behind them that can take over for them if they get hit by a bus. You got to start thinking that way. And you got to start looking at that. That means we've got to open up and be able to teach people that are right underneath there to do those kinds of things, because we will never get strategic if we are putting out fires every day. Never be able to do that. So we got to open up. And I just got to say this, guys, and I'll be able to tell who looks guilty. Some of us are just control freaks. See, I saw the guilty ones. I won't look at you. I promise, not looking at you. But sometimes we don't want things to go wrong, and so we hold them to ourselves. And the bottom line to that is we haven't hired correctly. You know? We haven't hired somebody that we can turn around and trust. I remember when I started the consulting firm, there were just two of us. And I remember that we started getting more and more clients and more clients, and my partner said to me, Joanne, you just got to let go. Somebody else has got to do some of this. And I remember saying to him, when I can turn around behind me and think somebody else can do it and I don't have to worry about it, I'll let go. So, but then he said to me, well, whose fault is that? You know, how come those people aren't there? How come we haven't hired those kind of people? Well, maybe because I want to be the star a lot. So there's some of that goes on in every single piece of us. So we have to be really careful about this little triangle. Okay, I know this is the least interest to you, but you've got to listen to me on it, okay? If there is no margin in revenue at the college, there is no mission. It gets compromised all over the place. You cut to the bone, or you lose a position that was crucial to what your vision is and what you wanted to do. So when you don't have margin, you want to know how much margin? I think for colleges between 1,000 and 2,000 students, it's got to be $1 million. You've got to have $1 million in surplus, which means that you've got to look at all revenue streams and make sure they're all going towards getting to that place. Because if you don't get there, mission will get compromised every single day. And you are the ones whose hearts will hurt the most over that. Because you will see what students need that they're not able to get because of the compromise. So you've got to be very careful with this. So let me tell you how it happens, because this is one you're not used to doing. So I'm going to tell you in that first bullet, there is no private college in this country right now who can say that they are not going to grow unless they have $100 million or more, probably $200 million in endowment. And then maybe, okay? And I had a little college in Vermont that was fighting with me about this. So we're going to stay at 600, Joanne, and we're going to just be really good at 600. Doesn't work. You can't provide what these students need today, and you can't scholarship them to the point to what they need it if you're for sure under 1,000 students, and you can't make it happen. So everybody's got to grow. But here's the deal, guys. The choice about how to grow is out there if you can open your minds to it. If you're closed up to adult education, then you've left yourself only 18-year-olds, and there are less and less of them. There are 52 million adults in this country right now who want to complete their college degrees. And how anybody can think that's not part of our mission just absolutely blows my mind. If we're going to have a nation that has less hate, people are more informed, they're more educated, their minds are opened up a little bit more, they have to get a higher education too. And so many of them want to, and some colleges are locked up to them. So we've got to grow. The question is how. And I think I put in the second bullet, the student demographic of the next 2 decades drives entrepreneurial thinking about these alternative revenue streams. Now, everybody wants to talk about the issue of diversity in the country and how that's going to change us in our colleges and universities. Part of that diversity is 52 million adults who would do anything to figure out how to complete a degree. Anything. And so it's an interesting thing for us to think about. Has to be at night, has to be 1 day a week, has to be in cohorts, so it's different. Could be online, it's all different. But we're going to have to open up to it. The third thing there, metrics are established for adding and deleting programs. I think, and I can say this to you, that our last frontier of finding money is in the academic area. And I love faculty members, and I'm a liberal arts nut, so I'm not bashing. I'm just saying schedules are still being designed around faculty and not students. Release times and overtimes are off the top of the charts. Structure keeps getting bigger at the top, not at the bottom. There are all kinds of things happening in the academic area that if we could look at it and then we could bring it back to the learning area, I'm going to talk to you more about that in just a minute, then we could do much better. But we've got to have some way. There got to be sunset clauses on our programs. If you have an opportunity to speak into that, speak into it. You're going to start up a new program and it's going to have 10 students and it's going to stay for 10 years. It's hurting the mission. So there needs to be a sunset clause. Is it working? What can we do to tweak it first year? Is it really starting to grow second year? If not, sunset. You know, it's gone. Or change the name, like I told you earlier. And that does a big piece about it. So the budget process being conservative and collaborative, you don't get into this much, guys, but I'm going to give you, there might as well be a big red warning sign flashing nationally about this. We cannot develop a budget in any college or any university that is based upon recruiting a number of students that we have not ever recruited before. Can't do it. You can't just say, well, we only got 230 last year, so we're going to go with 290 this year so we can make a budget that works. It isn't going to work. It's just not going to work. And the same with the annual fund. It's exactly the same with the annual fund. We'll make this budget, and if we don't get the students, then we'll turn over to advancement, and we'll say to the advancement folks, you got to get that annual fund up by another $1 million so we can make the budget. The thriving colleges are budgeting conservatively on a number of students and annual fund dollars they know they can get, and then they're making themselves some stretch goals that they use in order to look at getting to that surplus level. So if you need to be a voice about this, be a little bit of a voice about this, because it only leads downhill in the financial arena. It only leads downhill. So that's what we mean by being conservative. And by collaborative, we mean the future, the next 10 years is going to be about stopping things and starting new things. It's just going to be. It's going to be, we're going to get rid of this because it's not working, and we're going to start up this. And if somebody on leadership teams is not collaborative about that, the buy-in won't be there. You don't want to hear that your program's going to be dropped before you've had a chance to speak into it at some point. So we've got to have a little bit of that collaborativeness. Collaborative does not mean you get to help do the budget. You know, it doesn't mean you get to sit with the CFO, figure out the budget. It means that you have a responsibility that in your area things are efficient and tight, and so nobody's looking to say, what can we cut here? And that you're using and leveraging people and resources to the best area. So you know this is the biggest element right here, because nothing else happens if this one isn't right. And the resources of colleges have been so intuitional, and they've been sort of kept by one guy or one lady. You know, CFO's kind of I'll disperse this, and you'll get that, and y'all approve this, and it can't be that way anymore. We've got to govern our budgets by financial models now. The thriving colleges have a financial model. They can plug in a number of students. They can plug in a res hall net revenue. They can plug in a fundraising thing that's going to happen. They can plug in a new building that needs to be renovated. They can put all that in and come up with what the budget ought to look like. Nobody ought to be doing it out of their head. And nobody ought to just be tweaking it from last year these days. So it's got to be financial modeling that we look at here. This is a great big one. So the next one, I did this last night. I hit the bullets. This is the one I really want to talk to you about, and I want you to see them one at a time. And then you've only got one more after this, so we'll be right on time. So I very rarely say the word academics anymore. I have completely gone over to the side of talking about learning, because so much learning goes on outside the classroom these days. And so that's why you see that this says for us, thriving private institutions know their students and they meet them where they are and they take them to a place of their highest potential. That's all of us. I don't know about you, but when I was in student affairs, I always felt like an educator. Educators. It's a sacred trust. We've said that, I said that to open up with you. You are an educator. And a lot of times the learning is more outside the classroom than it is inside the classroom, because especially these days, because learning can be gotten from so many places now. I'm amazed at what I could do. Now, I had this dream when I finished my career that I would get my PhD, just because everybody said to me 100 times, why didn't you go get a PhD? Could have done this and you could have done that. I don't really care about that anymore, because I can learn whatever I want, anywhere I want, and they can too. So it's learning that goes on everywhere. So let's look at this a minute. The thriving colleges are paying unwavering attention to innovative teaching and learning practices. Now, one of our affiliates is Frank Shushek from Virginia Tech, and so I know Virginia Tech is doing residential colleges, and so I've been there to look at it and all those kinds of things. So you know what a residential college is, right? It looks like you. It's got faculty living in the res hall, and it's got learning classrooms in the res hall, and it's got computer labs in the res hall, and career counseling in the res hall. If the big guys are going to do that, then we even have more competition on our hands. So learning is happening everywhere. Even if it's classroom learning, it's happening everywhere. And I'm going to say this to you again because I want you to internalize it. We all have to grow to be facilitators of learning, not lecturers. She says while she's lecturing to you. We all have to grow to be that. We have to understand that better, because it no longer can the professor standing up front be the source of information. Can't be the source of it. On any given day, a student could come in and say, you're wrong. I looked up 30 research. I did a literary review on what you're talking about, and your idea is old-fashioned here. It's a terrible pressure to be under for professors, but we've got to do more innovative teaching and learning, particularly for adults, if we're doing that. Oh, you'll love this one. The institution has to have a strong, I would even say intensive, orientations towards student service. That means customer service, okay? That means they shouldn't be waiting in lines. They should be able to do things online as much as they can do it online. They need to go to one-stop places to get all their stuff done. They don't need to wander all over campus to try to figure that out. They need the help desk for everything right in front of them in one spot where they can go and see it. Registration needs to be smooth and a lot of it done way ahead of time. Orientation needs to be just like that. Car drives up and you pop out and you're helping people unload and you're getting up to their room and there's no line, and they're getting into the cafeteria and there's no line. The services to students all over the place has got to be at a higher level than it ever was, because they're used to it. I don't think they're spoiled. I mean, I live right down the road from High Point University. I get to see this little concierge thing they do and whatever. They may be a little spoiled, although you'll never hear me say anything bad about High Point, because you know what it did? It figured out the students it had, and it taught them well, and it started making their program for them, and they're thriving. not just with a big $1 million surplus, but more. So they're going to survive all of this, even though you may not agree philosophically. So you've got to have a strong orientation towards student service. All right, this is one I'm going to ask you to talk about a little bit when you get together in groups after our break. If you don't have it, it's a big miss. There has to be respect and a strong integration between academic affairs and student affairs. We can no longer, can't separate ourselves anymore. And it's just going to be a thing of the future. I'm going to read you our student success person, Dr. Joanne Nelson, who's really become nationally known now for this, and she's at CREA, gave me a few points to tell you as I open up this discussion after we take our break. But you can't ignore this anymore. They can't be separate. They just can't be if you're going to thrive. The next one here is institutional opportunities abound on campus for connecting, engaging, discerning, and preparing for life. And I think the next one is about advising being retooled. If I would love to change the advising request, the whole question. Instead of what classes do you want to sign up for, I want to say, what do you want to do with your life? What are your goals in life? You know, where do you want to go, and what has contributed to that feeling in you? Have you done some things in that area that are good? Do you know your strengths on the Strength Finder? You know, I've got one college in the strategic plan. It says they are going to have the most relevant core curriculum in the nation. That means their whole core curriculum is based around what is the world asking for in these kids when they go. What are they asking for? And let's build our core curriculum around it. All of this is going to elevate in the next 10 years on the national horizon. And so no more can we do things like we used to do them. It is not going to be sufficient to have a couple of good activities and a couple of good life programs that 8 people come to. It's not going to work for the future. We're going to have to do something that really, really, really is different, and our advising is going to have to be different. We have advising teams all over the country being retooled, being retaught how to do this. They're experts on this now. There's an advising conference at Credo in a few weeks. I forgot about that. It could be filled. But if any of you are real interested in this, if you oversee student success or any of those things, then you ought to look on the website and see that conference. All the national leaders are going to be there. It'll be a good opportunity to learn some of that. But it's got to be retooled. And retention has to be improving. And let me give you this one nationally. Don't even talk about 6-year graduation rates. Don't go there. Nobody's interested in that anymore. Nobody can afford it. Nobody cares about it. It's even when you're reporting a 6-year graduation rate, it says we don't expect our people to get through. And that is a big warning sign. So we're talking about freshman to sophomore retention rates and what the averages are, sophomore to junior retention rates. We don't talk about first year experience now nationally. We talk about a program that goes through sophomore year or all 4 years now so that we retain people. That's where it's going. And you're going to have to go there with it or you're going to be down. Our students tell us through research that they want more ability to do experiential learning. That warms your heart, doesn't it? But let's talk about what that is in their mind. They want to do more internships. They don't just want one in their college career. They'd like one every year, an internship. So we got to figure out how we do that without faculty supervision every 5 minutes, or we're not going to be able to do it, because we can't do that without that. College is just thriving because they're letting students use their summer jobs as internships and reflect on them when they come back, and the right paperwork goes to their supervisors. We have several Elon students that do that with us all the time because we're so close to them. We've got people doing internships alongside of the work that they're doing when they're doing work study in a college now. Everything's going to change. They're screaming for being better prepared to go out in the world. So they want those internships. Screaming still for undergraduate research. Undergraduate research, huge. They don't just want to learn about something, they want to observe it, count it up, and see how it worked and see what they would do differently. I oversaw the provost at Elon. Jerry Francis is a close friend of mine, and he was running for the school board. And so I said, Jerry, I got to have an internship on this if I'm going to be your chair here and be the person that's helping you. So we got political science majors who scoured the polls. They did all the research on what happened at those particular polls during which times of the day, which ones were most populated, which where he ought to be, all based on some undergraduate research. Then you can go all the way to the other side with science and everything else and what can be done. They're screaming for community service. Often these days, they don't want to go out and do it all by themselves. They want group community experiences. Let's all build a habitat house. Okay, let's let the whole freshman class build a habitat house. That's become a big thing to them as they look at the community service pieces. So they're screaming with those kinds of things, and they're screaming about study abroad. And yet I see them screaming about something these days that's a domestic study abroad as well as a go across the world study abroad. So all of us can look into this. Can we send them away? Is it affordable for us to send them away for a whole semester to another college in France and lose the income and the revenue on them? That's tough. Is it feasible for us to look more closely at winter terms and May terms so they can go for 3 weeks and it's not an issue for us? That's probably the way we've got to go to get the mission and the margin right. So they're yelling for those kinds of things, those experiential kinds of things. They want to do more in their res halls. They want you to help them do more in their res halls and in their activities. So keep this student learning thing close to you. And last but not least is the campus itself, okay? Let's talk about this for just a minute. Thriving private institutions focus on virtual and physical spaces that are transformative. Res halls are reflective of best practices. Physical spaces tell the story. The banners are wonderful around your campus so that they show where the campus is, and that's always a good thing. But let me tell you a little bit more about this. Our students are looking for third places. You know what that means? That's that old Starbucks thing. They go to work or school, and then they've got their home, but they want somewhere else on your campus that feels like their space. After I retired a number of years ago, my third space became Panera's. I mean, I think I've got an office there in one of those booths. That anybody who wants to meet with me has got to come to Panera's. And so sometimes I'm there for 5-6 hours at a time. First I get my coffee, then my smoothie, then my soup. Just go through the whole thing. But it's my third space. Something happens to me when I walk into my third space. It's comfortable. I know it's private to me. I know I'm going to relax in it. We don't have enough third spaces for college kids. I don't care how much money we spend on brand new fancy buildings. We need more third spaces. And we could spend $100,000 making more spaces where engagement can happen and spend $20 million on a building. So I want to make sure that point gets across. I've got a little bit of research on it. We researched college kids, and what they tell us is this. They are interested in being committed to the place and fitting in the place. So being committed means they want places to engage and they want to feel part of a community. Okay? And under being fitting, they want things to be sort of attractive, but they want to feel like they belong. So we spend all of this money doing some things. We renovate res halls now, our architectural team does, because we don't even want to go at the big new res hall issue. Some of you can afford to do that. But renovating res halls so that they can have that feel that can be a third space is not hard. But it doesn't just mean painting bathrooms. Okay? It means different spaces, different furniture, different colors. All that is big research now nationally. People look at those things when they do what they need to do. So transformative environments are really, really important. And then I'll go back a slide. You usually don't get in on this unless your college does it. You get to say something. But the master plan for the college has to be compelling and living. So somebody needs to say, in the next 10 years, this is what we can do with the campus, and then we stick to it. We don't go to campus after campus where there's a white brick building and then another color brick building, and this one has a 70s look, and this one has a 2000 look, and this one, you know, all those different kinds of things. There has to be a master plan. And investments in technology need to be tied to mission and vision, not to Apple. That's it in a nutshell, guys. That's it in a nutshell. They cannot be tied to the next best Apple device. They have to be tied to what you need to teach and learn. And the wireless, when you research students now, we do about 10,000 every year and ask them what the #1 issue for them is on campus. It's wireless. And it used to be parking and food. Okay, and now it's wireless. So there's no question about where to spend money on technology. First, get wireless. Okay, that's what they want, more than latest devices and to be an iPad school and all of those little things. We worked with Seton Hill when they went through their iPad revolution kind of thing. So I'm not down on it, and I don't think it's bad. It's just that there's so much else we can do that doesn't cost so much money that really makes a difference. And then last but not least, buildings have got to be assets and not liabilities. And I'm going to sit here thinking almost every one of you's got a deferred maintenance issue at your college, because most of us do. And that those buildings cannot be liabilities. They've got to be assets to you. And we used to do this, I don't think we do this anymore. We used to have a product at Credo that was called experiential transformation. And it cost a certain amount of money where our architects would come in and say, plant a geranium there, paint those steps, paint that window, get rid of that trash over there. Just stuff that makes everything different. You end up looking at those things every day and you're used to them, so you stop seeing them anymore. The best thing you can do is go on a tour with one of the admissions counselors when they go with a family and see it through somebody else's eyes. At my colleges, I make the senior team go on a tour every 6 months and walk the tour group. And they go, oh my gosh, why didn't anybody ever tell us about that? Well, because you don't look at it anymore when you walk by it every day. You just don't look at it anymore. So, it's 10:31, I did it, I think. Did I do it, or was I 15 minutes over, Leah? I do it? I don't know. Anyway, we're done. We're going to take a break. And when you come back from the break, I'm going to have to ask you to do one of those uncomfortable things. I want you to mix up a little bit. Now, if you want to sit by function, that's okay. But I'd rather you didn't sit by college. And I'd rather you sit with people that you don't know, because we're going to do some good discussion, and I certainly want you to learn something. You're probably not going to learn it from the person who tells it to you every day. So let's get in different kind of circles, okay? I think it's 10:45. Leah, is it 10:45? Yes, 10:45. Come back and sit somewhere different. Thank you.